What started as a cruel attempt to humiliate her turned into a moment that silenced the room and shattered egos. You won't believe how she turned the tables, with nothing but her talent. It was a warm Friday evening at La Fontaine, an upscale restaurant in the heart of Raleigh, North Carolina. The atmosphere was a blend of refined indulgence, the clinking of glasses, hushed conversations, and the faint strains of jazz from the grand piano in the corner. Among the waitstaff moving swiftly between tables was Deborah, a 25-year-old waitress with a quiet demeanor and an unmistakable spark in her eyes. To most patrons, she was just another server, but inside she carried dreams far bigger than the luxurious dining hall around her. Deborah wasn't just a waitress, she was a pianist. Ever since she was a child, the piano had been her refuge. Every joy, every sorrow, every unspoken thought, she had poured them into music. But dreams don't pay the bills. Working long shifts at La Fontaine was a necessity, a stepping stone toward the music academy she longed to attend. Few knew of her talent, only the restaurant staff who occasionally caught her stealing moments at the old upright piano in the back room during breaks. Tonight, however, everything was about to change. As the evening rush settled, the door swung open. Leonard Grayson walked in, instantly recognizable. A wealthy entrepreneur with a taste for spectacle, Leonard exuded an air of superiority. He thrived on pushing people's buttons, on making himself the center of attention. His entourage, equally polished and pretentious, laughed at his every remark. Deborah's colleagues exchanged wary glances. Leonard was a difficult guest, known for making service staff squirm for his amusement. But tonight he had found a new target. His gaze landed on Deborah. He studied her for a moment, then smirked. The game had begun. Deborah approached the table, balancing a tray with practiced grace. "Deborah, huh?" Leonard drawled, glancing at her name tag. "Sounds like someone with hidden talents." She offered a polite smile, dismissing the odd remark, but Leonard wasn't done with her yet. As she returned with their orders, he leaned back in his chair, raising his voice just enough for nearby tables to hear. "Tell me, Deborah, what do you do when you're not carrying plates? Surely a young woman like you has dreams." Her grip on the tray tightened. "I play piano sometimes," she answered, her voice steady but cautious. His eyes lit up. A slow, smug grin spread across his face. "A pianist? How fascinating. Why don't you give us a little performance?" The restaurant fell silent. Deborah's heart pounded. I couldn't," she stammered. "I'm just here to work tonight." "Nonsense," Leonard declared, waving a dismissive hand. "There's a piano right there. Show us what you've got." His companions chuckled, entertained by the scene unfolding. Other diners turned their heads, curious. The weight of expectation settled on her shoulders. Deborah wanted to refuse, to walk away. But Leonard's challenge hung in the air, daring her to rise to it, or crumble under its weight. Then, with a deep breath, she made her decision. "Fine." The room held its breath as Deborah walked to the grand piano. She slid onto the bench, fingers hovering above the keys. The polished surface gleamed under the soft glow of the chandelier. Behind her, Leonard leaned back, arms crossed, his smirk unwavering. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and then she played. The first notes were soft, hesitant, a gentle ripple of sound weaving through the air. And then her hands took flight. She played Clair de Lune, but not just any rendition. This was something else, something raw, something untamed. The melody poured from her fingers like a confession of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of dreams pushed aside but never forgotten. The restaurant fell completely silent. Conversation ceased, forks froze midair, the very air seemed to shift. Even Leonard, who had been whispering to his companions, went quiet. Deborah was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist, and her music was her voice. As the final note rang out, the resonance lingered. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. And then, thunderous applause erupted. Diners rose to their feet, clapping with a fervor that brought tears to her eyes. Her co-workers, watching from the sidelines, beamed with pride. Strangers, people who had ignored her mere moments ago, now looked at her with awe. Everyone except Leonard. Leonard remained seated, hands clasped in front of him. The smirk was gone. In its place, a mask of forced neutrality. "Well," he said, chuckling lightly, though it lacked its usual bravado. "That was unexpected." Deborah met his gaze, her expression unreadable. He gestured lazily toward a waiter for another drink, a flimsy attempt at regaining control. "I suppose talent really does come from the most surprising places." Deborah tilted her head slightly. "Everyone has a gift," she said, her voice calm, deliberate. "It's how you choose to use it that matters." The words hung between them, soft yet sharp as a blade. For the first time that night, Leonard had nothing to say. As the night continued, Deborah felt lighter. Patrons stopped her, not to order, but to offer words of admiration. "You were incredible," an older woman whispered. "I don't think I've ever heard anything so moving." By the time Leonard's group left, quietly, without their usual fanfare, the energy in the restaurant had changed. Where there was once arrogance, now lingered something richer. Respect. The tips from that night were unusually generous, enough to cover her rent, and a little extra for the piano lessons she had been postponing. But the biggest surprise came days later, a call from a music producer who had been dining that night. He wasn't offering fame or fortune, just a chance to record a demo, a step forward, a door opening. And for the first time in years, Deborah felt ready to walk through it. What dream have you been holding back because of fear, because of doubt? Don't wait for someone like Leonard to test you. Take your step forward. Now, if Deborah's story inspired you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph. Your story could be next.